It used to be that calling a film a turkey was an insult. Nowadays, there's actually an audience for some of the worst movies ever made.
Baby, you are gonna go broke showing turkeys like these.
Now we're talking turkey.
Gobble, gobble, motherfucker.
It's turkey time. Gobble, gobble.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Let's Talk Turkeys. I'm Movie Miss. We are discussing the movie 1986 Howard the Duck. And to do this, I wanted to bring on returning champ from the Punisher episode, our resident comic book aficionado, Mike.
Wow.
Welcome to the show. Hi.
Aficionado. I've been upgraded from comic nerd.
Give you a step up. Why not? And for listeners, just some of you already know, he is also my husband. But like he likes to say, there's no accounting for taste, right?
Again, that's quite an upgrade for me.
All right. So as I mentioned, we are discussing 1986 Howard the Duck.
Across the sea of stars lies another world, a world almost exactly like ours. This is where he lives. He's 27 years old, single but searching. Favorite sports, windsurfing and Aikido. Favorite pastimes, cigars and sex. He has everything except fulfillment. And then one night, it happens. Hey, good buddy, are you home? He has a very sudden midlife crisis. He lands in Cleveland.
You do know why you were sent to me?
Listen to me, small visitor. I can explain how you got here.
Maybe you're here for some greater purpose, some cosmic cause.
Here, he's forced to reassess his career goals.
You went to med school?
To explore new relationships. To redefine his self-image.
I'm sorry, we don't allow pets on the premises.
To adjust to a changing lifestyle.
Pull it out!
Until he discovers just who he really is.
Oh,
A duck in big trouble.
That's a duck, man!
Howard the Duck, trapped in a world he never made.
I just want to know from you, before we dive into particulars about the comic, the movie, just off the top of your head, impressions, how many times have you seen it, and what do you think?
I have seen this movie probably 4 times, and each time I see it, I have the same conclusion. It's hot garbage.
I concur.
It's a movie that probably should never have been made, and it shows.
Okay. Well, the critics agree with you. We're discussing it because it is a turkey. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 14% with critics, an audience of only 38.
Frankly,
So-
I'm surprised it got to 14. This really comes across as a single-digit movie.
I was also surprised. It's 111 minutes, which seems really long for like pre-Marvel movie.
You could have easily cut 25 minutes out of this movie and it wouldn't have made any difference.
Agreed. And also another thing that struck me as weird is it's rated PG, which back in 86, they were still, dealing with trying to figure out what's PG-13, but this was a weird PG to me.
Well, there's not really any nudity unless you count duck nudity. And there's no real swearing in it. So I'm assuming it's PG for violence.
See, I figured like at least PG-13 because of terrifying situations. Like I would think a small child would be kind of scared.
Well, frankly, even the violence in this movie is mostly slapsticky. There's a few disturbing creatures in it, or the villain is kind of odd.
Yeah. So this movie had a budget of reported 30 to 37 million, and they even used ILM, Industrial Light and Magic. So that made me laugh because some of the special effects in this, I was getting like full-on Ghostbusters vibes.
Well, this is a George Lucas production. So, he's got to get his money back from this dud somehow.
It had a box office of 38 million, which surprised me. So it barely broke even.
I'm shocked that this movie made 1 red cent.
So it was directed by Willard Huyck. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm sorry, sir, if I messed up your name.
Never heard of him.
He did Best Defense in 1984, and it was a flop. And then they let him direct this right after.
I don't recall Best Defense. Does that have James Garner in it?
I don't know.
I could be thinking of Tank,
Oh, maybe. I do know that George Lucas and Willard met at USC Film School, and his wife, Gloria Katz, also worked on this and produced. Indiana Jones, I guess they worked on together, and somehow 2 awards for the American Graffiti screenplay also
So
happened
this would
for
be
him.
the famous UFC film school. It was called the UFC Mafia, which was Lucas and Spielberg and a bunch of their cronies.
USC. This isn't wrestling or whatever.
I'm sorry.
UFC.
It
Fighting.
might
This
as
isn't
well have
fighting.
been, this movie might as well have been made by wrestlers. If you told me Hulk Hogan directed this piece of garbage, I'd believe you.
Apparently, the reason critics didn't like it, and I'm kind of with them, the overall consensus was because they said the movie tried to skirt that line between Groucho Marxy type humor and Donald Duck lovable cuteness.
I'm sorry, you're not allowed to reference Donald Duck. Otherwise, the Walt Disney people will come down on you.
Right? That was a problem with this. But I guess that was a thing. They were trying to, the critics think they were trying to skirt that line, and they didn't quite go one way far enough or the other, and it just didn't work. And I'm with them. This doesn't work.
If you'd have gone rated R and maybe threw in some more nudity, no, I take that back. It still wouldn't have worked. I don't know that there was anything you could do to help this movie.
Would you say this was the first Marvel movie? Like, did this start the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I'm going to go with no on that.
Well, does he pops up in the current Guardians of the Galaxy?
Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2.
So are they going to bring him back, you think?
He's in both. No.
Make him snarky? No,
he's not coming back in movie form. Maybe we'll see him in the What If series.
Oh, okay. So let's jump in to, before we get into the movie, I want to hear a little bit, since you are up on this sort of thing with comics and whatnot. I'm not going to take the movie as telling me Howard the Duck story. I want to know what his comic book story is and what it should have been.
Well, Howard the Duck, I could tell you, he was created in 1973 by writer Steve Gerber and artist Val Mayerick, whom I'm not super familiar with. And he made his debut in a comic called Adventure into Fear, number 19, which featured a character called Man-Thing, not to be confused with the DC character called Swamp Thing. So he debuted in 1973 and just appeared sporadically as a backup feature occasionally for Man-Thing.
Was he a superhero? Like, I don't understand his origin, because in this movie, he's not a superhero of any kind.
No, going back to the writer Steve Gerber, who had just kind of weird ideas and wanted to put some of his political leanings into his work. He's more of a political satire character, if
that makes sense.
Makes any kind of sense.
Okay.
He'd been around for 3 more years. It wasn't until 1976 that he got his own title, Howard the Duck, and that they introduced Beverly. A lot of people don't realize that he didn't originally fall into Cleveland. He fell into a swamp.
Oh, okay.
So the Man-Thing story, the swamp where the Man-Thing lives, is kind of a nexus. They call it the nexus of all realities. So a lot of just weird things tend to happen there.
Okay. So they kind of reference Nexus in the movie. Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So he wasn't, though, a superhero in the comics, correct? He was just a duck who had a gun or something?
Yeah, he has no superpowers.
That's what I was trying to understand when I was watching the movie.
He's what would just be an average human, essentially, only he's a duck. They did later give him a martial art called Quack Fu, which they reference in the film, which would be nothing more than a person who knows some modicum of martial arts. Yeah, no superpowers. There is one storyline at one point where he gets an Iron Man style armor and goes around as Iron Duck.
Sweet. Now that should have been in this movie. All right.
Yes, they could have got Robert Downey to put on a duck suit and Iron Man armor.
They would have taken all my money. Is there anything else exciting to know about Howard from the comics?
From the comics and in sort of real life. In the comics, there was a political party called the All Night Party. And in 1976, they drafted Howard to be their presidential candidate. Which in the real world resulted in him actually getting several thousand votes for president.
Are you serious?
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he got real world presidential votes for a fictional character. Probably not the first or last time that will happen, though.
All right. So for the motion picture, we have a top billed cast of Leah Thompson, Jeffrey Jones, Tim Robbins, Ed Gale as Howard, and Chip Zien as Howard's voice. And then there's a few other bit players that we can get to as we go. The IMDb plot for this. A sarcastic humanoid duck is pulled from his home world to Earth, where he must stop an alien invasion with the help of a nerdy scientist and a struggling female rock singer.
That's fair.
Shockingly.
And a good description of Howard as a humanoid duck, because he's neither duck nor man.
All right, so let's dive into the movie, shall we?
All right, George Lucas screws us again. When Phantom Menace came out, I was still mad at him for this movie.
So that tainted your view, is that what you're saying?
No, I hated both of them. It wasn't going to matter. Phantom Menace was another hot piece of garbage, but you'll have that for another time.
Yeah.
Right.
So our film opens in a city on the water, and the title credit reads George Lucas Presents. So I was like, ooh, okay. I love Star Wars. Here we go.
This would be not long after Empire Strikes Back. That was, what, 83? So this is really only a couple of years post Star Wars. Yeah, Lucas would still have that honeymoon glow on him.
So we see two moons over a city, and the credits start to roll as we see a duck come home to his apartment. He tosses some mail down, and we see his name is Howard T. Duck, and his address is in Marshington, D.C. That makes me laugh. So is his planet then, I'm guessing, an exact parallel of Earth, except everything is just ducks? Did I pick that up correctly?
For the purposes of this movie, yes. In the comic book version of Howard the Duck, the planet is populated just by anthropomorphic animals in general. So there are other types of animals on his world normally.
See, here you get that it's all ducks, because on the wall in his apartment is like fake movie posters for
Right,
Indiana
which are
Jones.
all completely horrible duck puns.
Hey, I laughed at Breeders of the Lost Stork. That had me chuckling. His album is on the wall. It says Howard and the Heartbreakers. So that tells you right there that he's also a musician.
Does this imply that Howard is Duck World's version of Tom Petty?
Oh, see, I would have leaned more toward Huey Lewis, but okay, I see where you're going.
Because he doesn't really appear to be that good.
Shots fired. So we get a good look at Howard as he's sitting in his recliner to watch TV. And I'm going to just say, I know that they spent $2 million on this suit, the various suits, but it looks bad. It's not a good look.
$2 million
On the suits, yeah.
on the
Yes,
duck
sir.
suits.
Yes, sir. That is verified from my Googling.
Some of that went directly into Lucas's pocket because he's trying to get his money back ahead of time. All of the magazines, all of the TV shows, just another series of horrible duck puns.
Yeah, he's flipping through the crazy shows. He's opening his Play Duck magazine to admire Miss October and duck titties.
Anytime I see duck breasts and I'm not watching Food Network, it's very disturbing.
So an earthquake happens while he's in his chair, and suddenly the chair starts to levitate and goes flying out of his apartment backwards and through the walls, and he goes passing through other ducks' apartments. He even flies over another lady duck in the bathtub, more duck titties with nipples in a PG movie.
I don't understand. So are they mammalian ducks? Because they appear to lay eggs. So why duck breasts?
Why the boobs? I know, it's so weird. So he goes flying up into the sky in his chair, and he gets sucked into a giant glowing pink hole that looks vaguely like an opening rose, or...
Yeah, some other kind of giant pink hole.
So gross, you decide.
It's the nexus of all realities. Anything could come out of that thing.
So Howard gets sucked through this
Nexus.
pink light tube in the sky, which is this nexus. And we see that his Earth that he's on is in fact egg-shaped, his planet. It's so terrible and corny.
We get it already. He's a fucking duck.
There's a terrible sounding, to me, voiceover while he's flying through space. It's so random. And the guy's telling us, about space and galaxies and endless realities, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of this thing, he says, and in the beginning, there was Howard the Duck. And we get title card. This makes no sense. Why did they even need that? Just show him flying from one planet to another.
Because
Call it good.
nobody really knew who this character was, and he got this big budget movie. So
Oh.
I think they just need to hammer home. This is Howard the Duck, this guy right here.
Narrating for dummies. Got it. So next we see Howard falling into another long pink tube down that shoots him into Earth. He goes through a giant billboard that says Cleveland on it so that we know exactly where he is. He bounces off of a brick building and crashes through a roof, landing in an old easy chair that is conveniently placed in a back alley somewhere.
No, I believe he was in his chair.
No. Out of his chair through the tube, and he's going,
No,
through
he was.
space.
I thought he was sitting in the chair when he gets sucked through.
Nope,
Okay.
he lands in it in the alley. I'm not going back to watch this again to verify that because fuck
Okay.
that noise, but I'm just saying. No, because he falls through a roof and he's like, like flailing. Okay, anyway, that's neither here nor there.
The point is, he gets sucked into the Nexus. He lands in Cleveland, Ohio, and Drew Carey nowhere to be found.
He's immediately attacked by a group of punks, and by punks, I mean not only thugs, but ne'er-do-wells. They are dressed in punk style, neon colors, mixed black studded jewelry, eyeliner. Like they're trying to really hammer the point home who these people are.
Right. I have in my notes, whoever the costume designers are for this film had never seen actual punks.
They are like every punk stereotype piled into one.
Exactly.
So they grab Howard, they take him into a nearby club where there is a band playing behind a giant chain link cage called Cherry Bomb, and the lead singer is Beverly, Miss
Cherry
Leah
Bomb,
Thompson.
not to be confused with Sex Bomb.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm a comic book guy. That's the band from Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, gotcha. So a bouncer grabs Howard, tosses him out into the back alley behind this club.
I would point out that there is a dwarf in that costume.
For some of it, they had a child in some
Right.
other.
So is this where dwarf tossing starts? Also, not the last time that someone will pick up Howard and toss him in this movie.
So after escaping, almost being hit by a truck, he has a run-in with Satan's Sluts biker gang. And then he gets tossed off of their bike and falls asleep inside of an empty steel drum in the alley. Beverly is walking home now with her guitar alone in this alley, late, assuming it's after midnight. She gets harassed by two men who tussle with her, and she gets a good right hook off at one of them. I was happy about that. They end up disturbing the drum that Howard is hiding in, and he leaps into action. He hops up on top of the drum and he tells Beverly to run. And I like how they all freeze and stare at him like they don't know what they're looking at. And the one guy goes, I must be seeing things because of doing too much toot. I guess PG movie, they had to call it something other than
They couldn't say meth.
I'm doing too much toot. I was like, what?
Also, I'd be surprised if an anthropomorphic duck hopped out of a garbage can.
And then looks at you and says, don't laugh at me. I'm a master of quack fu. What?
The duck martial art.
Which just looks like regular martial arts, only smaller.
Because again, you have to keep hammering home that he's a duck.
So he makes quick and impressive work of kicking their ass and they run away. I was like, whatever. I'll roll with it.
I would like to point out again, Howard's a duck, so he kicked their tails.
So suddenly there is a flash of lightning and it is pissing rain just out of nowhere. I guess that happens. And can we talk just for a second though about Beverly's hair? Apparently this crazy, girls from the 80s know this, with the crimping iron, which looks like a tiny waffle iron. It looks awful, but it took like 2 hours every day before filming to just do her hair. Was it worth it? Was this a good look for her? Was she hot?
Well, young Leah Thompson, it's hard to describe her as anything but hot, but no, her hair just looked like weird, big 80s hair. You could have probably picked any hairstyle and it wouldn't have mattered.
She's a beautiful girl regardless, but that hair was just killing me. So Beverly tells Howard he is on Earth in the city of Cleveland. It's cute to me, though, that he calls it Cleveland. I will say, I was like, oh, you silly duck. But I thought it was weird too. They're walking home now and it's piss and rain, like I said, and he doesn't want to get wet. He's like trying to get under her umbrella with her. You're a duck.
Right. He is a duck who doesn't like to get wet and doesn't know how to swim.
Was that supposed to be funny? Because I didn't think it was funny. I was like, are you serious?
It was funny in 1940 when they used that for Daffy Duck, where he couldn't remember that he could swim or fly most of the time.
So she tells Howard he can come home with her, and she's apparently over the fact that he's a duck real quick, and she's fine with it. They walk to her place. It's funny because you can always tell if you really pay attention, because I've seen this movie several times as well since it came out. You can always tell when they're cutting between the little person who does a lot of the stunts and then the child actor, because the leg length of Howard, his legs get longer and shorter, scene to scene, and even in the same scene sometimes. It's super bizarre.
Which one are they longer for? Are
They're
they
longer for the
the
stunts
dwarf?
and things. Yeah. But anyway, it's just funny and distracting how his leg length constantly changes during the movie. So Beverly's place is a complete dump, but she tells Howard that she stays there because it's cheap, because her band manager owes her a lot of money and this is all she can afford.
It's cheap and it's like 3,000 square feet. It's like an industrial warehouse.
Yeah. So Beverly and Howard have a little conversation. They exchange names. She gives him a beer. Just as Howard is sitting down to relax, a truck goes by and causes everything to shake, and he starts freaking out and having flashbacks of flying through space.
I have a note about that. The passing truck shakes a giant warehouse. How big are the trucks in Cleveland?
Right? So Beverly calms him down by asking him if everyone on his planet is indeed a duck and what does he do back home. He tells her that he tried med school, but really wanted to be a musician and settled for being an advertising copywriter. Howard says that he must have a special destiny, and Beverly says maybe that's why he's here on Earth for a greater purpose. Now, this is where I'm going to say, after watching this movie several times, on this last watch, knowing how the whole movie plays out, I'm going to say, no, Howard, you're wrong. You are not here for some special destiny on Earth. Sorry. Nope. They set us up with that little conversation for like, oh, what is he here for? What's going to happen? And you're genuinely interested. What's going to happen? No, nothing. Howard passes out after Beverly covers him with a blanket, and then she just starts rummaging through his wallet and finds like a little duck condom. Bitch, if this was a human, you would not be standing there going through his wallet.
Or would you? I mean, you live in the cheapest place you can. You're in Cleveland, Ohio, and you just brought a stranger home. Wouldn't you want to know anything about him that you could?
I wouldn't have brought a stranger home in Cleveland, that's for sure. So the next morning, Beverly takes Howard disguised in a trash bag, okay, to see her, who we think is a scientist friend, Phil, because maybe he can help them figure out what happened. And at this moment, first time viewing, I'm like, how does Beverly know Phil? What? How are they friends? This is so bizarre to me.
They went to the same summer camp?
Phil met her, a few years prior when she was working at SeaWorld. Jaws 3, get it? So Phil is Tim Robbins, and I'm going to say, especially after just recently watching Tenacious D, Tim Robbins is so fucking funny and wacky. He is what makes this movie for me.
I have this in my notes. Tim Robbins, you're better than this.
But he makes this movie to me because I'm watching him closely and he's so funny. He talks to Howard like he's a small child or who maybe doesn't understand English. And then he starts talking to Howard in the voice of like Donald Duck. I was cracking up. So Beverly tells him Howard is smart and don't talk down to him. Phil decides they need to see if Howard has any superpowers. You're going to be disappointed, Phil.
I would also point out Beverly uses the line, "Oh, Howard, you're trapped in a world you never made," which is the tagline for his comic.
So they ask Howard to see if he can bend steel, and he can't. Burn wood with laser eyes, he doesn't have them. And read his mind and tell him the future, can't do it. Howard and Beverly storm out, upset. Phil chases them down and begs them not to leave. And they get interrupted by someone telling Phil that a kid puked in one of the exhibits and he needs to go clean it up. So we learned very quickly that Phil is more like a lab assistant / janitor and not a scientist.
I'm sure he was going to school to be a scientist, though, right?
Gotta be. It was weird to me because Beverly is shocked to learn this information. This is new information for her. Again, if you know him, you don't know what he does.
So this makes me think that maybe that Phil picked her up using the line that I'm a scientist.
Well, that's all I could think at this point was like, this is weird that they know each other. So they leave, and Phil says, "I'll call you later" to Beverly. How does he have her number? Or how do they know each other? So Beverly and Howard get into it outside. They kind of argue. Howard tells Beverly, "Get lost." So she storms off and leaves him stranded there. And Howard starts muttering to himself, he needs to get food, he needs shelter, he needs a job. You're a duck.
And you're on a foreign planet.
How do you know how shit works? Like, why? That's not smart to argue with Beverly. And it just, this movie starts out in the first 5 minutes. You're like, what the fuck is happening? Then it's okay for like 3 or 4 minutes. And then we go right back to what the fuck is happening. So we cut to the Ohio Bureau of Employment Services. And I will say, and you know this because we watched this one time together, this scene genuinely makes me laugh. This lady in this scene, it cracks me up how she doesn't realize that he's a duck. She just thinks he's a weird looking dude that made himself look weird so he doesn't have to get a job. It would be hard to employ him.
There are a lot of references to punks and punk rock in this movie, and she just seems to go along with, oh, you're like one of these punks that put in a lot of piercings and make your hair all weird, or in this case, tar and feather yourself.
Yeah, she calls him outlandish.
As many of our high school friends did back in the 80s.
He's got an outlandish appearance, but she's got just the job for him. She's going to show him. So we cut to a hot tub, basically rub and tug type of joint.
It's the place is called Hot Tub Fever, which I first put down that I thought it was a sex motel of some kind, but yeah,
basically is, but with hot tubs.
Gross.
It is. It's so gross. It's like dim colored lighting, steamy. Everybody's sweaty and in their underwear and making out. And Howard's just pushing this towel cart through the hall. And I was like, oh.
To be fair, it was towel boy at Hot Tub Fever or porn store janitor.
Well, I don't, to me, it's a personal thing. I'm just watching these people in the hallway. They're sitting there making out, like just in the hallway, not even in a private room. And Howard's, I don't get it. It's so bizarre. So Howard can't take it, the situation, and he quits. So the next day.
You missed the part. He goes to inform his boss that he quits.
Right.
Or before that, I'm sorry, let me go back. His boss tells him to look at one of the water jets. What am I supposed to do about it? You're the water expert I hired. This is where we learn that Howard can't swim because he gets dwarf tossed again.
Yes, he does.
So then later, when he informs his boss that he quits, he kicks his boss into the hot tub full of mud, I'm going to say.
And various other things, I'm sure.
We hope is mud, but it's, yeah, so probably gross. 20% feces and 40% jizz, I'm going with.
So disgusting. So yes, so he quits. And the next day he's wandering the streets in yet another change of clothes. I don't know how he's managing to do that. He's doing pretty well finding stuff to wear that fits his little duck body also. I thought that was...
He did say at the unemployment office or employment office, I don't know what term you want to use, that he bought his clothes at the child section of the Goodwill. Although I'm not sure where he got money up until that point to get them. Or he shoplifted them, perhaps.
Who's going to stop and frisk a duck? He could just freeze and like look like a stuffed animal if he wanted to. So, okay, he takes a bus, and of course, everybody freaks out as he's leaving the bus. They're like, what the hell? I don't know. He just kind of looks like a bad Halloween costume to me. I don't see what the big deal is they were like overreacting at the sight of him. He sees a bunch of TVs in a store window where the newscaster discusses duck hunting season. So he gets freaked out, and he runs away into a nearby alley, and he sees the chair and the club where Beverly's band plays. So he goes in and he sits and he's listening to Beverly sing. And it's really Leah Thompson singing in this movie, which I thought was really cool, actually, a good touch.
Right. And the band, though, Cherry Bomb, supposed to be a punk band.
Not so much.
No, they dress more like anime than punks. Their music it's straight pop. They would get laughed out of any legitimate punk club.
That tracks because they're playing a slow song when Howard goes in, and it sounds very pop ballady. And then we see Howard observing Beverly's manager getting paid at the bar, and Howard confronts him and tells him he wants the girl's money. Otherwise, there's gonna be trouble. The guy grabs Howard and sends him sliding down the bar in that classic movie way.
Excuse me, I have to make another mark in my notes where Howard is dwarf tossed.
We need a little ticker counter for that, right?
I'm at 4.
So Howard recovers and he manages to pin that guy down to the bar with an ice pick through a hoop earring and threatens to bite him, giving him space rabies. Did they have rabies on his planet? Because if it's all a duck planet and no other animals.
Right. Rabies is a mammalian disease.
Thank you. So I was like, that joke didn't make me laugh because it didn't make sense to me.
But the ducks have mammaries.
I was like, what? That's not funny. Why would they have rabies?
Although I did think Space Rabies, much better name for Beverly's band than Cherry Bomb.
So the manager gives Howard the money and agrees that the girls can get out of their contract. The girls go back to their dressing room where Howard apologizes to Beverly. So the girls in the band, we get a good look at them here in the dressing room. We've got Dominique Davalos, Holly Robinson Pete.
Just Holly Robinson at this point.
Probably, yes. And then Liz Segal, which is Katie
Segal from Married with Children?
Correct. It's her sister, Liz. And you can see the resemblance if you know that looking at her going in.
That tracks, so as Katie Segal was a backup singer for Bette Midler.
So that tracks that her sister would be musical as well then.
Right.
Phil shows up and is all excited to see Howard because he pops into this room to see the girls. And we find out, oh, okay, this is how he knows Beverly. He is dating Liz Segal's character. But still, wouldn't you know what he does for a living if he's dating your friend? So Phil starts spouting crazy theories about Howard's origins, and they're all laughable, of course. He suddenly leaves, and Beverly asks Howard to come home with her. And on the way out, he gives the girls their money from the manager. Just then, Phil comes running up saying he's off to meet a colleague and he needs to match feathers. So he reaches out and he plucks one off of Howard's ass. I love that so much. He's so offended.
I didn't understand that Howard seemed to indicate that it really hurt. Would that be any different from pulling out like a single hair from somebody? Because that's not that big a deal pain-wise.
When's the last time you had a hair pulled off your ass? Never mind. All right, so later at Beverly's, the two get into bed together, her and Howard.
Possibly the only worthwhile piece of film in this entire movie.
You're only saying that because of Leah Thompson's costume.
Or lack thereof.
So she and Howard are in bed. They're flirting heavily, which was so bizarre.
Also, I noticed when Howard is checking her out, he also does the same thing at the employment office when the woman searching for his job bends over to check a file. Howard is clearly a tail man. Although he seemed to like the unemployment office woman better. I'm going to say maybe bigger is better in Howard's opinion.
So they creepily flirt, like I said, and they both say it won't work. You're a duck, I'm a human, it won't work. And then she says, oh, never mind, I'm only joking.
Right. I did have in my notes, is this where the term fuck a duck originates?
Oh my God. So they kiss, even though she goes, I'm only joking. And then we see it in shadow, the kiss behind a screen. And it's a good thing they did that in shadow because that's just too weird. I don't want to see that.
Right. Maybe that's where the PG comes from. It would have been PG-13 for implied bestiality.
It still was, though. Anyway, so Phil and two professor friends let themselves into Beverly's apartment and see this kiss through the screen happening. And they just walk right up to the bed and look right over in at Beverly, who's basically naked. You enjoyed that costume, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And Phil says his colleagues are Carter and Dr. Jennings, played by Jeffrey Jones. I like how Beverly's going, what are you doing? And Phil's like, oh, the door was open. I'm sorry, what?
Also, if you live in a crummy neighborhood in a giant warehouse, wouldn't you lock the door?
That immediately popped in my head. How, bitch, do you not lock your door in this neighborhood? For real. They show Howard and Beverly the two feathers that they've compared, and Dr. Jennings says he can explain how Howard got here.
This would be Howard's ass feather and another feather.
Dr. Jennings says he is in charge of an astrophysics lab as he puts in a video cassette for them to watch. Kids, this was when we used to have a VCR to watch our cassette tapes.
I have another note to myself. Sweet VCR.
So they explained to Howard in a nutshell that they were testing a laser spectroscope. Something went wrong and it zapped Howard and brought him to Earth. And at that moment that he hit Earth, a single feather wafted down and landed in their lab. And that's where they got that feather. And then they compared it to the one from his ass. There you go. So they discuss possibly reversing the laser to send Howard home. Dr. Jennings goes ahead and Beverly and Howard have an awkward moment bedside as she packs him a bag because they're going to say their goodbyes, he thinks. So this was weird to me because this is only, so far into the movie. And she explained to him, you're here for a reason. You're here on Earth. There's a destiny. And all of a sudden it's like, well, we're going to shoot you back in the laser and off you go. I was like, what? Nothing happened.
His purpose was to get the band their money. Mission accomplished.
So Phil, Carter, and Beverly and Howard drive to the lab as Phil acts very upset because he is losing Howard. He's convinced he could become famous and or rich with Howard.
Specifically, I have this written down. Phil's laments include, I could have been a contender, which is a line from the Marlon Brando classic On the Waterfront. So at least we know the writers have seen a good movie and are aware of them.
So as they go inside, alarms start going off and they go into the lab where we see explosions are happening inside. A lab tech with a burned face comes running out.
Is it his own burnt face or is he holding someone else's?
Once in the lab, a tech tells them Dr. Jennings took the full force of the explosion that just happened and they don't know where he is now. Cut to cops showing up and they strip Howard down to his skivvies because they think he's wearing a suit. Splain?
Because you can strip midgets in Cleveland?
I don't understand their logic, yeah. So then they decide to take him to jail on the charge of being a quote unquote illegal alien. I roll.
How do they know he's
What?
an alien?
What? Just like space rabies. It's all these stupid space references and nobody knows for sure.
Also, wouldn't they take Howard to the pound or wherever you take stray animals?
Shouldn't they call animal control?
I mean, he did claim to have rabies earlier, so.
So they proceed to cuff Howard in the front.
Cuffing in the front.
Oh, Lord.
What I have that as movie trope number 7 is whenever you cuff a perp in the front.
They shouldn't do that.
Never.
Didn't they do that in Punisher as well? We talked about that one.
Yes.
Why is it always just in movies? Is it just because it must be because it services the plot?
Yes.
Because
almost always it's so somebody can escape.
yes, because in this scene, Beverly and Howard get the drop on this one officer that they're left with, and they escape. So Howard and Beverly run into Dr. Jennings outside, who says after the explosion, he blacked out. They hop into Jennings' car and bust through a chain link gate to escape while he's complaining about having a horrible headache and he can't concentrate. But by all means, sir, you drive. What is that? If I don't feel well, I let somebody else drive.
All the while, like you said, just way too much exposition on what is happening to him.
Yes, this scene goes on far too long. So then out front, we see the cops tell the lieutenant in charge, hey, a car busted out. We better get an APB out. You saw a car. You're just going to put an APB on what? Car?
How many cars can there be in Cleveland?
So Dr. Jennings now tells Beverly and Howard a great evil has landed and they are in danger. And he can feel something inside of him. And he's driving erratically. Pull over and let Beverly drive. Shit, at this point, let Howard drive. So Jennings tells them his insides are replicating and growing and he's in pain. And Beverly, which I guess this is supposed to be funny, says, okay, we'll stop at a bathroom. Really?
Are you saying that poop jokes are beneath this movie?
So they narrowly, while he's driving erratically, miss a semi-truck and multiple cars. Why haven't they stopped yet, was my question. They cut across a highway and brake just in time to stop inches from a roadside diner window. How do Beverly and Howard, how do they not know something is wrong right now? You almost died multiple times in the last 5 minutes. And they're acting like, well, whatever, let's go inside the diner. Let's get something to eat and relax. So suddenly Jennings says he's dead, and then his voice changes. And I guess the interview that I read said that he changed his voice. It was his idea to have the voice change when he gets possessed.
Well,
And it
despite
actually
his
works for me.
despite his many personal problems and the fact that he's in this movie, Jeffrey Jones, a fantastic actor, but much like Tim Robbins, just wasted in this movie.
Yes, I have to say, I did laugh so much at the Turkeyverse connections here because you've got Jeffrey Jones. He was in Ravenous, which we've covered, and Leah Thompson, Jaws 3, Tim Robbins, Tenacious D, but they're still good actors. So it's like mind-blowing to me.
Well, sometimes you just need a new car.
So, like I said, Jennings says he's dead, and then suddenly his voice changes into what I always watch my movies in closed captioning, and the closed captioning said his voice was sinister. And I just say, get the man a cough drop. Like, I like that he tried to do something different, but clear your throat, man. So Sinister Jennings tells Howard and Beverly that he's not Jennings anymore and he's someone else.
And this is while they're sitting in a booth in a diner.
So they're getting coffee in this diner, okay? The hostess says they don't allow pets. They don't allow pets, and Beverly says, well, Howard is a seeing eye duck.
Because that's a thing.
The jokes in this movie so far, not landing for me.
Right. Jokes, puns, they're all...
Didn't work for me then, don't work for me now.
Like the writers were trying to write for children, but the movie's not really a children's movie.
Exactly. The thing that was funny to me was Tim Robbins' performance. The things that weren't funny to me were supposed to be funny. The jokes, they were not funny to me. So at this booth, the waitress tries to take their order, and Jennings tells her he doesn't need food. She's about to witness the end of the world. Beverly and Howard both put their fist to their head and lean and eye roll at the same time. Like, oh Lord, here he goes. End of the world. You just saw him almost kill you on the motherfucking highway. And now he's acting weird and saying the world is going to end. And you're just going, oh, brother.
At the very least, you would think, oh, this man has a severe head injury. Shouldn't we take him to the hospital?
They just do this stupid thing where it's like they're so over it. Like, oh, Dr. Jennings. And I'm like, are you serious? So Howard asks Dr. Jennings, I guess they haven't picked up something's wrong with him. Can you still use the laser and send me home? And Jennings says he's not Jennings. He is a dark overlord of the universe, and he's hiding his true demonic, hideous form inside Jennings. They still don't think anything is wrong with this. The waitress brings 3 specials to the table. Explain this to me, sir. Howard loses his shit because there's eggs in the special.
I'm assuming, since he came from a duck planet, that would the Earth equivalent of that be, here's some bacon and fetuses?
I just don't understand why Howard was so offended, because if they lay eggs for their babies, the ducks, they don't crack eggs and eat eggs. They don't know what eggs as edible food would be on their planet, correct? If we're going with the logic of what this movie's telling us their world is like. So how would he fucking know what a fried egg is?
Maybe there's a high infant mortality rate on this planet because people drop their egg babies.
Oh my God, you're killing me, Smalls. Let's agree to disagree on the egg traversy that we're having here. So Jennings uses eye lasers to explode the glass ketchup and mustard bottles on the table and says that his powers are growing.
Proving that Bill knew what he was talking about.
Meaning?
He had eye lasers. He could probably bend steel.
Jennings pulls out a code key card and says it will activate the laser to bring more dark overlords down to Earth. Howard tries to grab the key card and he gets electrocuted, zapped in some way.
He's also a human taser.
So Beverly notices Jennings' face is now changing. Howard grabs that code key card, but before they can leave, again, putting all the stereotypes into one, some good old boy comes up and hits on Beverly.
And why wouldn't you?
Of course, right? No male stranger in this movie seems to be able to resist her. Everybody hits on Beverly.
That's fair. I expected at any moment for Biff Tannen to come in and hit on her.
So Howard jumps up to defend Beverly's honor, and one of the men grabs that code key card out of his hand, and Howard proceeds to get into a fist fight with basically everybody in this busy diner.
And let me guess, at some point during this fight, does somebody pick Howard up and toss him?
He does get tossed.
Oh, let me make another mark here.
Then he gets beat and captured and tied down in the kitchen.
You're leaving something out. In the middle of this whole melee, for about a good minute of it, it's a pie fight.
Yeah, they stand there and wait for Howard to throw the pie at them. You can see that he's picking
multiple
up a pie.
pies, like in a Three Stooges short.
Yes. Do you stand there and wait? What is he doing? What is that? Oh, it's a pie. Like, why would you stand there?
Because the writers hate people.
They hated us. Okay, like I said, he gets beat, he gets captured, and he gets tied down in the kitchen. And again, everyone in the diner, apparently they're all allowed in the kitchen, and they're all around Howard, and they tie him up and they say, help, help, they're gonna cook me. This makes no sense, but okay.
Why would you cook a talking duck?
Right? So Beverly tells Jennings, one of those men has your card, your key card thing, and Jennings, whose face has changed a lot more by now, starts glowing. Terrible CGI here.
I was going to say, congratulations, ILM. You did it. What effects.
He gets pissed, he gets up, he uses eye lasers to magically control a cleaver and freeze Howard. And he says, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. I roll. I'm starting to sound like Nikki Flicks on this episode. So everyone runs out screaming as Jennings keeps exploding and zapping everything. He uses his powers to get the key from Howard, and he takes Beverly and leaves.
And by key, it's a thing that looks like a big garage door opener.
Right.
With like a little keypad on it.
So as they drive, Jennings is telling Beverly that his body needs more energy. And so this bizarre tentacle tongue thing comes out of his mouth and plugs into the car lighter, and he gets a surge of electricity. And it looks so bad.
Again, this was an improv thing because it was something that Jeffrey Jones did in his bizarre personal life.
God. So back at the diner, the police are all there. And of course, they have Phil, who is sitting in the back of a cop car.
I would like to point out, cuffed in the front, and there is no divider of any kind between the front and the back seat.
Right, right.
And the window is rolled down.
So he sees Howard in the distance and calls him over and tells Howard to let him out of the car, but then he realizes the window's open, so he crawls into the front and crawls out the window. Howard tells Phil Jennings is a monster and he's kidnapped Beverly and he's headed for the lab. So Phil and Howard go into a nearby storage yard of some kind.
Right.
Unclear what this is. Impound yard?
Well, they're in Ohio. If their license plates are to be believed, I believe is the birthplace of flight. That's where the Wright brothers had their bicycle shop.
Okay. So they find this makeshift airplane of like spare parts and stuff, this little hang glider airplane. What is that?
It's called an ultralight.
Okay.
Which is technically it's a heavier than aircraft, but it's powered by a single engine in the back with like one propeller. It's essentially a hang glider with some wheels on the bottom and an engine to get and keep you aloft.
Okay.
Generally not made for two people.
So then they're rooting around for this aircraft, and then we cut quickly to Jennings and Beverly still driving as the sun is starting to come up, and they turn into a nuclear power plant. Then we cut back to Howard and Phil taking off in this, what did you call it?
Ultralight.
Okay, so they're taking off in this.
They managed to repair and learn to fly an ultralight in an hour.
Yeah. And also, how do they know where to go? Because Howard said earlier, oh, they're headed for the lab. I guess they know which direction.
Also, the logic is Howard is the pilot because, he's a duck, so he should know how to fly.
That's so stupid. This movie is an insult to my stupidity. Now at the nuclear plant, Jennings has joined a visitor tour group, complete with jackets for the tour.
Maybe it was a tour for visiting scientists, perhaps.
And what luck that at the exact time he needed to go there was a tour he could jump into. Like, really? And also, what visiting scientists, I don't care if it's scientists or whatever, they're visiting this nuclear plant at dawn.
Maybe it was a surprise inspection from the NRC.
So he separates himself from this group and he breaks a glass window and goes into a room with, I'm guessing, a reactor of some kind.
That was in Sector 7G of the power plant. You won't get that reference, but someone else will.
So he soaks up all the nuclear energy as alarms in the facility start to go off. Beverly, who was tied up in the back of the truck cab outside, gets loose, but then gets startled when Jennings returns and he is glowing red in this horrible Ghostbusters-ish CGI. Again.
Referencing this movie and Ghostbusters in the same breath, you should be ashamed of yourself.
The reason okay, let me defend it. The reason I say Ghostbusters-ish is because if you remember what those streams of light coming out of the proton packs looks like, that's what this glow and the glow that Slimer has. This is what this glow reminds me of.
I think this movie is what they were worried that you would get if you crossed the streams.
So we cut to now Phil and Howard, and this scene way too long. Here's where you could have cut your 20 minutes out of the movie, right?
Agreed.
They're still flying too low and barely avoiding collisions left and right as the cops are chasing them. Far too long of a scene and not amusing or funny.
Again, if this would have been a biplane, it would have had the Three Stooges in it.
So then as the cops chase them, they decide to go over some water. And of course, a cop car goes flying off the docks.
Apparently, they had a bunch of leftover police cars from the Blues Brothers and decided they would just finish them off in this crap movie.
Oh my God. So then as they're flying over the water, we get a facepalm scene because they fly right over some boats of duck hunters. Okay, so Howard makes a reference about flying down over the duck hunters, like dive bombing them or whatever. How does he know they're duck hunters, first of all? And doesn't he yell something like, Tora, 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 at them when he's like dive bombing? Like bonsai or something.
Yeah, how would you be familiar with duck hunters? Because the ducks don't apparently fly on your planet, except in airplanes.
He knew about him earlier when he saw him on the TV. He's like, oh my God, duck season. What? How did you know that? And also, when he's dive bombing these guys and he's saying like bonsai and Tora, 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 how would he know what that means?
There's an Imperial Japan on Duck World.
All right, so Jennings and Beverly come to a roadside smog inspection type checkpoint, and
is this a real thing? Roadside smog?
It's so bizarre.
If you haven't seen the movie, and why would you? Because it's horrible. The roadside smog inspection appears to be like a DUI checkpoint, only they're going to check your car emissions.
So stupid, I know. It's just lazy writing.
Also, it's not near the city. It's out in the middle of nowhere where this nuclear plant is.
Yeah, it's lazy writing. It's just an excuse to have them be pulled over because Jennings gets to zap a bunch of cops and cars that are in his way for this big explosive CGI scene. Not explosive, not exciting. No. Then we cut back again to Phil and Howard still flying and being chased by cops. And now they're being shot at. Phil makes a repair while in flight to the fuel line. What? I'm so insulted by this movie.
So clearly Phil is some kind of scientist. I think he went to the same school as the professor on Gilligan's Island because he apparently knows a little about everything.
Might have gone better for them had he had some coconuts.
He can fix an internal combustion engine. He can build an aircraft. He can sample DNA. He's probably going to build a radio out of coconuts later in the movie.
The professor on Gilligan's Island could do all that, but he couldn't fix a 2-foot hole in a boat. So the plane, as they're making the repair, Howard flips it upside down. And how does Howard know how to do the loop-to-loop maneuver? I don't know, but he does it. And then we cut to, finally, Jennings and Beverly get to the lab and they go inside. And I'm just thinking to myself at this point when I'm watching the movie, I pause it and I'm like, Jesus, how much time is left? This movie is, nothing is happening, like traveling. These people are all traveling through the middle of this whole movie.
Might as well have been Lord of the Rings.
So now we cut back. They get to the lab, but then we cut back to Howard and Phil. And they finally make it to the lab too by crashing into a pond. And of course, Howard, I can't swim. I can't swim. Phil's got to help him.
Of course not. I'd like to point out, as you're crashing, why do you cover your face?
Because you don't want to see what's coming. So Howard and Phil go into the lab and they see Beverly strapped down underneath this giant laser spectroscope. Phil tells Howard he knows how they can fight Jennings. They have to go get something from the Defense Research Room.
Also, should I have been making hash marks for how many times Beverly is tied up in this movie?
I don't know. Were you keeping track of that sort of thing?
I'm thinking I should have been.
So the door's locked and Phil doesn't know the entry code. And of course, Howard gives it one little kick with his little ducky legs and boom, sesame, the door opens.
He lays a webbed foot on it and it opens.
It just opens right up. Once inside, Phil finds a neutron disintegrator behind a padlocked gate. Then we cut. Can't let us finish the scene. We cut back to the lab. Jennings at this point looks like a cross to me. He's totally morphed now into this dark overlord, right? He looks like a cross to me between Albert Einstein and Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty. So he's starting the slow process of engaging and powering up all this equipment. It goes on far too long.
Right. And the point of this, I guess he explains, is he's going to reopen the Nexus and draw in everyone from Demon Dimension.
The rest of the Dark
Where
Overlords.
he came from.
Yes.
Right. Dark Overlord's also a better name than Cherry Bomb.
So we'll get to the rest of the Dark Overlords here in a minute, because trust me, I've got some thoughts. Then we cut back and see Phil breaking the lock with a sledgehammer, which just happened to be sitting in this lab full of sensitive equipment. Movies. So then they have this little car thing, this little go-kart type of
Right, like a
thing.
golf cart.
Golf cart, yeah. They can like strap this neutron generator gun thing on top of whatever it's called. And Howard's driving it, and they have a mishap, and they get zapped by Jennings when they're trying to attack him. Phil gets knocked out. Howard drives that little car at Jennings. And then Jennings and Howard are going to face off, right? So the energy beam shooting from Jennings and the energy beam that Howard is firing are like crossing streams. See how the Ghostbusters thing, see, again.
Also, when you said they were going to face off, I was hoping it would be the Travolta Cage kind of thing.
No such luck. So, of course, there's an explosion. Howard is fine, however, and then they find Dr. Jennings, who is also totally fine. Okay. Jennings said he died earlier, and then the Overlord took over his body. How is he fine right now? Because movies? So Jennings says, I'm okay, but the Dark Overlord has been released, and he is still here. So Phil unties Beverly just as the Dark Overlord monster busts up through the floor. And this is laughable and not in a good way. This is not your Ray Harryhausen shit happening here.
Okay, so the monster left Jennings, and we know this because Jeffrey Jones has the line, "The evil is not inside me anymore."
I know what you're going to say.
He used the same line in court, didn't work then either.
Let's talk a minute about this not Ray Harryhausen quality stop animation monster.
Right. Okay, so you were saying that the effects in this movie were ILM?
Yes.
Right. Okay, because I'm pretty sure that this effect was Sid and Marty Krofft. I was expecting this monster to be holding hands with Johnny Whitaker.
So this monster grabs a hold of Howard. He's able to get himself free, but not before the monster can activate the laser. The monster zaps Phil and Beverly. I was like, to what end? Because it doesn't kill them. It like freezes them where they're standing in this weird glittery laser shell that they're just like trapped
and you would have thought these hack writers would have taken the time to put in the line at some point when Howard is getting zapped, "Your goose is cooked."
Oh my God. I don't know if that's actually funny or if this movie just has me just so dopey from watching it that makes me giggle. I don't know.
But it would fit perfectly with this movie.
It really would. It's that bad. Okay, so Howard hops into that little car and shoots the monster with that gun and blows him up. And I have to say, for all the buildup they're trying to give us, very anticlimactic ending to the monster. You're like,
Yeah,
that's it?
He wasn't so much.
So then the laser's counting down 30 seconds until more dark overlords arrive. Howard has to make a decision. Do I blow it up and stop more monsters from coming? Or this is my only chance to get home. So do I blow it up or not? Obvious choices.
Rid the world of evil or go home.
Exactly.
It's not your planet. What do you care?
Phil and Jennings yell at him to do it, and Beverly tells him not to do it. You need to get home. Howard goes ahead. Okay, here's the problem I have with the Dark Overlords coming. It makes a point to show us this pink beam in the sky, and here come 3 Dark Overlords. They're coming down, right?
Who also look like crop puppets.
Terrible. And they're already en route. We can see them counting down less than 30 seconds. They're already in our atmosphere. They're that close, even though they're in this beam. I'm trying to make logic out of this. I know, don't laugh. So they're so close to us. Even if you were to shut the gun down now, the laser, wouldn't they just fall? Wouldn't they be here?
No, the laser just sucks them back where they came from.
It's so fucking wrong.
Because
wrong.
the laser circuit didn't get completed by the laser touching our planet.
It makes no sense in this movie that made complete sense up until now.
You, madam, understand neither comic books nor science.
I understand shit movies, though. That's why we're here. So Howard goes ahead, and just as the countdown hits 1 second to go, they're literally right there, 1 second, he blows the laser up, sending the overlords back up the stream, like you said. Super anticlimactic, makes no sense. And Beverly, Phil, and Howard are all okay. What a stupid, stupid way to end that. This whole movie is just basically travel to get to this point, and it's so anticlimactic.
Well, I believe it was written as a trilogy, so they had to leave some room for the other. No, maybe not.
So now we cut to Beverly and her band performing on a big stage. We're talking Rock of Ages auditorium-sized stage.
And again, her band is just awful.
They're not so much.
No.
And here's the funny part. They're in this big auditorium on this big stage performing, and it's a huge crowd, and they know the song. They're singing along. I don't buy it. Howard accidentally makes it onto the stage because he's in the wings watching.
The duck wings?
He starts to play guitar, complete with the Marty McFly dance moves while he's playing the guitar. Did you notice that? And then they break into the song, Howard the Duck. How appropriate. Credits roll over the ending of the performance here. And then when the song ends, it shows Beverly. This is so bizarre.
This is a movie that doesn't deserve credits. It should just end.
Just end.
Go immediately to black and maybe just a little card that says, "We're sorry."
Get your money in the lobby. So it cuts to, after the end of the song, while the credits are rolling, Beverly and Howard backstage in the wings again, and she leans in and says, "That was great," and rubs his head gently, like affectionate, like you would with a significant other. It's creepy.
Or a beloved pet.
And then fade to black, the end, roll credits. And what I thought was funny too was in the credits, it shows at the end all the songs from the movie, and then it says, buy the soundtrack on blah, blah, blah records. Who bought this fucking soundtrack? Really? Leah Thompson had a delightful singing voice, but I don't need the soundtrack. All right. Thoughts, comments, anything we didn't touch on that you felt needed discussing?
Did I mention this movie is hot garbage?
You did, and that segues me into my 3 questions. Question 1, what size was the trash can that you threw this DVD into when you were done watching it? Mine's a cute little teal one.
I think it was just a regular dustbin because I stepped on it several times and smashed it into little bits.
That was legit my first question. It really was. Because that was what was crossing my mind as this movie was ending. I thought, how the fuck did I watch this more than one time? So question 2, do Howard and Beverly try having sex? What happens there? Because he's stuck here, obviously, and stays with her.
Comic book versions, I'm going to say yes. Movie real world versions, I think Beverly would be grossed out by the cloaca.
I feel like we need to bleep that word.
I seem to think that Howard has a front-facing penis.
Why do you think that?
There's a point in the movie where someone is threatening him, and that's where he covers up.
Wait, no, isn't that when the police are strip searching him and he goes, oop, and he covers his junk?
Also then, yes.
What would be his junk in the front?
Right.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, so if he has a penis, that's still bestiality. That's so gross. In the comics, they do it though?
Don't quote me on that. I did not read a lot of Howard the Duck comics.
Oh, okay. That would be so weird. So question 3. With Howard now, like I mentioned at the beginning, popping up in Marvel movies recently, like Guardians of the Galaxy, do you feel like maybe they might lean toward a new movie with him? And I ask this only because this movie is so awful, not so awful it's good, so awful that it's trash. Do you feel like Howard needs some, he needs justice done? He needs like a better version, a better telling, don't you think?
No.
You don't think he's interesting enough to do him like quote unquote correctly?
The property itself, I think, is tainted by this movie.
You don't think we can just forget it and move on? Because why would they bother showing him in the new Marvel?
Well, that's part of it. You're going to have to do a lot more than that. You're going to have to ease people back into. You're going to have to like boiling the frog. You're just going to have to do it a little bit at a time. Look, there's Howard. He's in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then maybe a couple more movies down the line, he has a small speaking part, and you have to work your way up from there.
I picture him being like maybe I'm wrong because I haven't read the comics, but a little bit like that raccoon where he's like snarky and sarcastic and fun, but he's an animal, but he's kind of acts human. Like, couldn't Howard be like that? And we could make him acceptable now?
I don't think so. Also because he's now owned by Disney, and they don't want him to be confused in any way. There was famously a lawsuit where Disney sued over the character because he was a dead ringer for Donald Duck. So as part of the settlement, Disney artists came in and gave him a redesign. The main component of which they obviously changed his face around so he didn't look like Donald Duck. And Howard's character from then on was forced to wear pants.
Which I always felt Donald should have, because when he got out of the shower, he would wear a towel around his waist. So, all right, anyway, I digress. That is going to wrap up our conversation on this gem of a motion picture.
Oh, thank God.
If anyone is interested, and God, why would you want to watch this movie? It is currently available, pay streaming on Amazon Prime and on Peacock.
What do they call Peacock on Duck World?
I would like to thank Mike for joining me today to discuss this. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
For you, no charge.
Appreciate that. And on that note, we will see you all next time.
See ya.
Goodbye. Hey listeners, Movie Miss here. Listen, I know you have a lot of options when it comes to podcasts, so thank you for listening to the show. I know everybody says this, but for a fledgling little show like ours that's just hanging on, we just finished season 4, we're rolling into season 5, it would really help us if you could subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Good Pods. We're also on Pandora, Audible, Amazon Music. It would really help us grow the show and reach more people if you could subscribe and then rate and review, which is really the key part of it. Make sure to be part of our Bad Movie conversation by following us on social media. Interact with me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Movie Miss, which is movie_miss. The show is on Instagram at Let's Talk Turkeys. Also on Blue Sky at Let's Talk Turkeys and Facebook. We're on X. I'm honestly not sure how much longer I'm going to have the show on there, but currently the handle is at Gobble Podcast. Get it? Gobble, 'cause like a turkey. You can also chat with like-minded bad movie lovers in our Facebook discussion group. And like I mentioned, we're rolling into season 5. It is 2025. The show, it's been a wild ride, still going strong. So if you have a movie that you would like to hear covered on the show, let me know by emailing direct at letstalkturkeys, all one word, at yahoo.com. Also, hit me up on socials if you want to be a guest on the show. Always looking for guests. I can assign you a movie, something we think is fun, or you can bring a movie that you think is a bad movie if it has a low Rotten Tomatoes score, or you just really don't like the movie but you like to talk about it. That's half the fun, I think. Again, this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. Without you, the show wouldn't still be kicking around. So thank you so much for hanging in there with us.
I'll be back.
Get the fuck out of here. Now I cannot.
Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Why don't you get the fuck out of here? Get the fuck out of here. Oh, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.